Welcome to the official launch of the new groundbreaking report, Data Beyond Demographics, U.S. Latinas' Economic Power, Influence, and Growth. We've been immersed in this research for many months, and we're excited to finally share it with you. There are lots of studies about Latinas, but none of them really delve into her as a consumer and as a producer, adding to the economic power of America. And so we're ready to deliver a wealth of insights about this topic to you today. I am Adrienne Pulido, VP of Inclusive Growth at Kantar Monitor, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today alongside Ana Valdez. If you don't know Ana, you're in for a big treat. She is the president and the CEO of the think tank, the Latino Donor Collaborative, and we are proud to call her our partner. We will also be joined by several client partners and leaders who help make this work possible. These leaders will join us in the latter half of the webinar for an open conversation and discussion about the findings. So please stay with us because that's going to be a very robust and rich part of the discussion. We'll be joined by Jennifer Chavez Rubio, Hispanics in Philanthropy Interim President and CEO, Juliana Gomez, TelevisaUnivision, SVP of Client Strategy, Shalise Nichols, Victoria's Secret AVP of Customer and Market Insights, and Eneida Roman, We Are ALX, Amplify Latin Excellence, President and CEO. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll share findings from our national study that covers 1,000 Gen Z and Millennial Latinas and 1,000 of their non-Latina peers. We did an intensive qualitative ethnographic style immersion with 30 Latinas across the country to enrich our understanding and our insights, and we'll bring those voices to you. And we put that together with some of our foundational work from the LDC and Kantar Monitor. And so with that, I turn it over to Ana, my partner, to get us started.
Thank you, Adrienne. This is so exciting, exactly as you're saying. So first of all, Ana Valdez, and we at the LDC, we're a think tank, and we focused fully on creating data that shows the economic impact of Latinos. And why do we do this? Because we want to detect growth opportunities for every American. And this report, out of the 74 reports that we've done in the last 15 years, is one of the most exciting ones, because as Adrienne will say, this has never been done by anybody. We talk here about who Latinas are, about how they consume, how they grow, how to engage them, and how to ride that wave of growth. But before giving you all these results from this report, which are really spectacular, I wanted to give you a briefing on some of those myths about Latinos and Latinas that sometimes don't help to understand who they are. And this is important for me because myths, decisions based on myths are not great. You know, you kind of are betting on the wrong horse. You kind of are creating strategies that are not really the strategies that are going to optimize your ROI. So let me start by saying Latinas are not a niche. Latinas are 1 out of every 4 young American women in this country. They are 34 million of them. And they are not, you know, your traditional stereotype. And I'm not going to go into stereotypes, but they are actually, for example, if you've heard that last year was a hard year for Latinas, yes, it was. But half the year into 2025, Latinas came out and said, we're going to continue working, we're going to continue growing. And as an example, let me tell you that Latinas and Latinos last year bought 440,000 homes, which were the growth of the United States. Without Latinos and Latinas buying houses, the house market would have gone down. Not only are they growing, but also Latinas are not predominantly immigrants. Some of us are, but Latinos, 80% of all Latinos in this country are citizens. And especially with young people, 94% of people under 18 that happen to be Latinos are US born. Because of that, you see this growth, right? You see this growth in their economic power. Most of them are going to college. Their parents, even when they were immigrants, they made sure that they actually learned what upward mobility was. And so they are going. They are producing $4.4 trillion. If Latinos in the United States were an economy by themselves, they would be the fourth largest economy. Only the United States overall, China, and Germany would be bigger than the US Latino cohort in the United States. With this, of course, comes consumption, it comes education, and more importantly, I think before we get into the data that we will share with you, let me close this myth versus reality section with Latinas are seeing themselves as leaders. They see themselves as senior leaders. And this is a difference, a statistical difference with non-Latinas. 71% of Latinas are aiming to become a senior leader in their field, whatever their field is, compared to 63% of women overall. Why are these differences important? Because if you want to target this huge segment, you need to know who they are. If you put them into a general market or if you put them into a general diverse market, you're missing the point. They are there. They want to be acknowledged. And I hope these numbers really help you to understand the following numbers that Adrienne will start following right now.
Yeah, thank you, Ana, for that backdrop. And this is a great slide to come right after that, which is that Latinas are influence multipliers. We know that 86% have joint or primary responsibility for financial decisions in their households. They're also significantly more likely to be the person friends and families turn to for advice on new products and brands. And they're also more likely to be asked for guidance on personal finances, investments, and budgeting when compared to non-Latinas. So they're not just consumers, which is a major theme of this report. They're advisors, they're recommenders, they're validators within their networks. So when a brand reaches a Latina, you don't just get a customer, you also reach her network. And the next major point is that Latinas are trading up. One of the biggest misconceptions, as Ana just mentioned, is that Latinas are primarily value shoppers. Now, don't get us wrong. We are all value shoppers in this environment. But as Latinas move up in education and earning power and entrepreneurship, as Ana has been describing, they're also moving up the economic ladder. Now, what does that mean? It changes how people spend. You start investing in products that are reflective of the life you're building. And Latinas are significantly more likely than non-Latinas to be trading up to more expensive and higher quality products compared to non-Latinas. Ana.
Yes, thank you, Adrienne. This is the slide that surprises me the most because I just talked about the market in general. Adrienne is starting to talk about Latinas specifically. And Latinas are just not, they are extremely ambitious, let's put it that way. They are financially savvy, they advise others, they move up economically, but 80% still feel ignored and neglected by brands, by policymakers, by content creators. They still feel that they're not being seen. And this is money for brands and for anybody that is a resource allocator in this country, right? 20 statistical points more than other non-Latinas feel this way. For me, and as I said at the beginning, we're in the business of detecting opportunities. For me, this is one of the biggest opportunities because if brands do, and some of them are doing, not all of them, but the leading brands are. If brands detect this opportunity, they go after them. They know how to engage them. They know how to authentically create a market and a product for them, or a solution or a service, right? They are researching, they're buying, they're influencing others. And that's the big opportunity. Imagine the advantage for the few brands that do make it, that start understanding it through these reports and through other things. That is waiting there, unfortunately, as money being left on the table so far, but as an opportunity to grow immediately.
Now, Ana, we've spoken a lot about this one. The line that many of us heard growing up, we Latinas, calladita te ves más bonita, which means you are prettier when you are quieter. My mother used to tell me not to raise my hand in the class because the boys might not like me. So our generation traded silence for fitting in. I will tell you, my daughter is nothing like that. And our Gen Z and Millennial Latinas in this report aren't like that either. So in this case, one of our Latinas said, we should not shrink ourselves to make others comfortable. We are here to live authentically and bring our best self forward. And if that makes others uncomfortable, they're going to need to get used to it because they are not going to change. And this Latina was not alone, because we had 70% of the Latinas in our study saying it's important to take up space and command respect in professional settings, and another 64% to say even more than that, that they're motivated to become a leader, to take action, and to make changes. That's an overwhelming majority and a sign of significant change compared to prior generations. 58% of Latinas say their cultural identity is a competitive advantage. Again, big gap. We have 13 percentage points higher than non-Latinas who don't have that cultural identity factor that is influencing the way that they think and the way that they make decisions. 65% say their cultural background also influences how they authentically express themselves. Again, 18 percentage points higher than non-Latinas. Culture is one of the clearest statistical differences in the study that fundamentally shows a different relationship between identity and ambition. So when we hear sometimes some brands say, well, really aren't Latinas like everybody else, think of this factor. Think of the difference that this cultural identity plays in the way that they make decisions. Now, this quote gets right to the heart of the challenge. As this Gen Z Latina put it, some brands put red lipstick and gold jewelry on a brown model, and they call it representation. In other words, Latinas know the difference between being seen and being stereotyped. And increasingly, they're rejecting these outdated notions about who they are and what matters to them. The challenge for brands is that this is not just about representation, because they don't just want to be represented. What they want to be is understood and reflected in a more real way that that reflects what's important to them.
Yep.
And so the problem is that nearly 8 in 10 Latinas are saying that stereotypes are showing up in advertising and media. More than half, 56%, are saying that they actively walk away from brands that perpetuate them. The brands that win won't just be the ones that represent, but the ones that really get it and can really portray Latinas as they want to be portrayed. And that was one of the big questions going into this study is, okay, so if we're to get away from stereotypes, then what do they want? What is that portrayal that they're looking for? And we thought this was pretty revealing. At the very top of the list are entrepreneurs. Women breaking into, then after that, women breaking into traditionally male-dominated roles. Women successfully juggling the demands of modern life. And then CEOs, and I should say business leaders. So what stands out is that these aren't passive roles. They're leadership roles. They're achievement roles. They're women with agency, ambition, and influence. And while non-Latinas also want to see successful women, Latinas place significantly greater emphasis on entrepreneurship and leadership. Why? Because they reflect that ambition that Ana talked about at the beginning. Latinas are already doing it. They see themselves in that role, but yet they don't see those roles reflected back to them in imagery that is supposed to represent them.
And Adrienne, if I may add, this
Please.
graphic is very representative of our report because what we want is for people to understand who they are and how they're different, not because they're better or worse, but because if you want to engage them, you need to understand what's different and unique from them. And this really helps you to see the difference in all the qualities that we talked and more, right? It's illuminating to really be able to define this cohort in a more detailed way, given their values and what they're aiming at.
Yeah, and being very cognizant of this, even as we were putting this report together, photography choices, casting choices. We really took great care, and you'll see in the report, which will be available to you after this webinar, you'll see in the report the type of imagery that we very carefully selected to reflect exactly what they were telling us. And you'll see that you might be working against certain biases that you may have, and that we even had to a certain extent.
Exactly. We all learn.
We all learn, right? All the time. Entrepreneurship. Well, we have seen entrepreneurship show up repeatedly in this study. 1 in 5 Latinas owns a business today, but what's even more important is that more than half of Latinas expect to own a business one day, significantly more than non-Latinas. Entrepreneurship isn't reserved for a small group of high achievers. It's part of a broader vision of success, independence, and ambition. Ana?
I love this one because I don't know if you remember, Adrienne, but we all smiled when we saw this result, because at a time when there is so much conversation about whether the next generation will be worse off than their parents, 7 in 10 Latinas are driven to believe their children will be better off than they are. That's 12 points higher than non-Latinas. This talks about not only the ambition, but also talks about the optimism, right? The optimism of a community that has been able to get through the challenges by hardworking, by loyalty, by patriotism, by being, that given the importance that they believe family has. And that's a lot, right? Latinas feel like their drive to succeed isn't only about doing better. It's about shifting the story for our families and creating something different for the people that come after us. For us, it's about legacy. And it's not only legacy for our kids, it's also with their parents, right? You see all these examples in graduations and in all these milestone events. You see Latinos, really kind of gearing towards the family in every way when sometimes other communities may not, which again, it's not better or worse, it's just a way of being. And so that is powerful because the belief and commitments is probably the reason why this, Latinas are so motivated. And the thing is this, it's not showing any signs of slowing down, even with the times, right? Even with the times, not because of the recession, not because of a pandemic, it didn't happen in 2020, and not because of any policy change.
Yeah, this is pure determination.
Yep.
Pure determination. So, as you probably noticed from the headlines, Latinas are navigating a more charged and political environment today, to say the least. And it's having an impact. Nearly 3/4 of Latinas feel discrimination has worsened. Keep in mind that this cohort is largely US born, as Ana just told us. And 2/3 say that this environment is a wake-up call, prompting them to become more educated and engaged. It's shaping how they spend, how they vote, who they support, and what they are willing to tolerate and not tolerate. We could have had a range of reactions to the political events over the past several years. And this is the one that we're getting. We're getting wake up call. I'm paying attention now. This has created a shift. One of the themes that surfaced repeatedly in this study is that Latina ambition is rarely just about the individual. It's about family and it's about community, and it's about creating opportunities that extend beyond oneself. Many Latinas have personal connections to the issues reflected in this chart, maybe environmental issues from their communities, immigrant rights that may affect their communities or their families, corporate responsibility and social issues, or supporting nonprofits that help people advance. Now, that's why we describe this as community uplift. And community uplift is measured by what their success makes possible for others.
It's interesting because, Adrienne, this is, I think, again, another one of the treasures of this report is that, you know, Latinas are much more assertive. They're watching what brands are doing and other policymakers and resource allocators. They have the capacity to do it, right? They're doing their research. And I think the result is also an opportunity, because the result is that they're not waiting for permission. They're actually defining trust for themselves in the decision making that they're doing. They're choosing institutions that deserve their trust, and they're deciding where they invest their time, their attention, their money. You know, they have agency and they feel they do have it, and they're acting on it. This agency is the thread that connects all these key learnings that we see here: their entrepreneurship power, their leadership aim, their accountability with themselves and with their families and their communities. All of this is agency. And this is the opportunity that we're saying, right? Because Latinas need to be understood. And once you understand them, they're open to connect with you.
Yeah. And so we've only just scratched the surface today. The full report goes much deeper. You can download it on a link that we're going to provide to you shortly. And we will continue exploring the findings in greater detail. If you stay with us for a conversation with our client partners who have been immersed in the research with us and who have a point of view from where they sit in their companies, from their brands, and from their organizations. So we are going to shift over to our panel discussion. Please stay with us.
Yes.
And now for the best part. We wanted you to hear from our client partners who have been on this terrific journey with us. So Anna, will you introduce them?
Of course, it's an honor. Thank you, Adrienne. And please help me welcome our wonderful team. Jennifer from Hispanics in Philanthropy, Juliana Gomez from TelevisaUnivision, Shalice Nichols from Victoria's Secret, and Eneida Roman from ALX.
Yes. So with that, we're going to jump right into the questions for our group, starting with what stood out from all of this work? What stood out for you? What stands out? What seems a little different? So I'm going to start with Juliana.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're so happy to share this data. What stood out the most for me around this study, it was the realization that Latinas are not aspiring to prosperity anymore. They're driving it. And through this study, we have data to back it up. This study challenges that narrative that is often used to talk about Latinas in terms of aspirations. Latinas aspires to have a better life, economic prosperity. The data is showing something far more powerful than that. Latinas are no longer aspiring to prosperity. They're here. They're actively driving employment, wage growth, economic success, and they are rewarding themselves and upgrading with their hard-earned money. So just let me share a couple of data points, because we saw that Latinas are the driving force on that 2.8 trillion consumer spending. But this is not a future tense story. This is an economic reality today. And this prosperity isn't just a macroeconomic data point. It's a lived reality in millions of households. And the research shows that definite generational gap. We have more than half of Latinas reporting doing better than their parents at the same age. They're breaking the cycles, they're building from new higher foundations, and this confidence is rooted in financial literacy because they know better and they know how to make their money work harder for them. And we're seeing also the millennial Latina being the primary income earner in that household. And with all that economic power, they have a new consumer mindset. And this is huge because the old outdated stereotype of the value-driven Latina is completely outdated. Latinas are more likely to trade up and buy more expensive, higher quality things. So this is not about aspiration anymore. We need to change that adjective. With Latinas, is about ambition going forward. So that's the main finding I find around the data that we're sharing today.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you know this area particularly well because you work a lot in the financial sector, don't you? Yeah.
Yes, correct. That was tremendous to see throughout the data. That right. Latinas are here and they're going forward because they're very ambitious. Another thing that I thought looking at the data is that Latinas are not waiting for a seat at the table anymore. They're willing to build the table. And that changes everything.
Cool. Yes. And Eneida, I remember that you said something similar. Do you want to talk more about that?
Of course. I mean, first of all, thank you so much. We're delighted to be here. And, what Juliana is describing, we see every day in our work at ALX when we work with small business owners, with leaders across sectors, because the reality is that, like Juliana said, Latinas are not waiting for a table. I mean, they're building their own tables. And the operative question is whether institutions are able to evolve fast enough to meet those needs for the Latinas of today and tomorrow, right? Because we like to say a lot that Latinos are the future and Latinos, the sleeping giant. We're not. We're here. We are building wealth. We are starting businesses. We are leaders across industries. Latinos don't have a startup problem. We have a scale-up problem. And this is not unique to the Latino community. A lot of small businesses face these issues, but because networks and infrastructure are so important to building wealth, we want to make sure that we serve as that infrastructure to any Latino who wants to start a business so that they know that they're building not just economic infrastructure, civic infrastructure, and social capital.
And I think Jennifer, you have a different take on this, or similar but different.
Right. Well, thank you so much for including us. Hispanics in Philanthropy is so pleased to be part of this project. And similar to what my colegas have said, what stood out for me is that gap between Latina economic power and how often institutions fail to recognize it. For me, so much of the research validates what we see every day at HIP, and that is that Latinas are already driving decisions in their households, their businesses, and in communities, and yet so many systems continue to overlook their influence. A data point that really stood out in my eyes was that 86% of Latinas have joint or primary responsibility for financial decisions in their households. So they are responsible for giving choices, donation choices, which is something that Hispanics in Philanthropy is taking a careful look at. And I was also drawn to the finding that 71% of Latinas see personal success as a way to uplift their communities. And that reflects a value system we see again and again in Latina communities, that success is not just about individual achievement, it's also about creating opportunities for others. The findings that challenge some of the outdated assumptions also stood out, that Latinas are not consumers, we're not takers, we're givers, we're entrepreneurs, we're investors, we're financial decision makers, and of course, we're leaders in our communities with the ability to strengthen Latina communities through our generosity, as donors, as volunteers, as leaders on nonprofit boards. So really exciting data in this report that we're proud to be part of.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. And then a similar question, a little different, and I'd like Shalise to answer this one, is what kind of challenged your expectations or your perspectives, your assumptions, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me as well. It's just been such an honor to be part of this work. So for me, really understanding beauty and the role that it plays in her life was a real moment of clarity for me. This work really teaches us that how she presents herself is rooted in an expression of confidence, identity, and control. So I'm going to say that one more time because when it hit for me, it was such a goosebump moment. But how she presents herself is really rooted in an expression of confidence, identity, and control. This insight alone is so critical, not really only to understanding our relationship with her today, but how to engage and fortify that relationship go forward. I really think that if fashion and beauty brands can harness this insight and connect authentically, we have the opportunity to play such an integral role in her life, really ultimately acting as an enabler for her goals of ownership and the success that she hopes to pass to future generations. So it's such a huge responsibility, such a huge opportunity, and it's really not to be taken lightly.
I was also fascinated by the fact that I discovered through the study how Latinas are positioning themselves in the professional world. So we saw that 65% of Latinas view their cultural identity as a competitive advantage. And for those of you that are not familiar, last year we did a youth study. And on that study, we started seeing how younger Hispanics were embracing their culture as a superpower. And now seeing it on this study across all age groups of Latinas is a statistic that provides a profound validation of that unique bicultural skill set that Latinas bring to the marketplace. It recasts that Latina as a strategic and ambitious leader that is evolving past those earlier perspectives that were solely focused on hard work. And I think Eneida mentioned this. Yes, there is hard work behind the Latina, but the business implications are clear because you have a professional that is now navigating a multicultural context and they find that ability as a valuable skill. And that is because the Latina discover that they are highly adaptable, they're resourceful, they operate as superior problem solvers who consistently think outside the box. And they have this skill set because they are bicultural. So to me, that was a big revelation around the study too.
Something else I love to say is invest where the growth is. The growth is in the Latino community. We need to invest. That's what Wall Street does. We should do the same. Brands should do the same, because organizations and brands that really understand and engage, because obviously they have internal people who get it and who speak to the cultural nuances that we all understand, they will gain access to one of the most dynamic and entrepreneurial, talented, I don't know, fill in the blank, positive adjective, right? Of this nation. And we want to make sure that we are capitalizing on that talent and that ambition and that that entrepreneurial spirit, that spirit that that they know that they can accomplish the American dream here, because their predecessors came here for a reason. They came here, they sacrificed a lot, and they're not willing to waste their time now. So that was really special to see. And, you know, in all three aspects, in the economic, in the civic, and in the social.
Great. Thank you for that, for all of you. Is there anything else that stood out for you, or any advice that you may have for brands watching? Because I think we have a lot of people watching today who are trying to figure out, how do you connect? How can you be more authentic? How can you really make a difference and help Latinas to not feel neglected and like an afterthought? So if there's just one thing you would say, what would you say to that?
We often talk about the barriers that Latinas are facing, and of course those challenges are real, but the research highlights something important, and that's really about how Latinas are responding. And that's with resilience, with innovation, and a really clear vision for their future. What stood out for me was how much authenticity matters to Latinas. They're paying attention to what brands are doing. They're paying attention to whether institutions are showing up consistently and respectfully, and they're making decisions based on that. They'll be consumers of those businesses that are choosing to support our communities and choosing to invest in and promote Latinas. I think that it's a real wake-up call for brands to pay attention to Latinas. They are also over-indexing on all the equity-centered issues measured on environmental justice, on corporate responsibility, on supporting nonprofits and community organizations versus non-Latinas. And I just think this is a really important message for brands to hear, centering on that economic power of Latinas.
Great. And Shalise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just add, and we've hit on it a couple different times, but I was just so struck by how strongly Latinas are embracing their identity, despite the challenging environment that we're all experiencing right now. And I think Juliana said it earlier, but many Latinas really increasingly view their culture as a competitive advantage. And so rather than pulling out in this moment when it's difficult, they're leaning in and they're showing up, they're participating, they're asserting their agency. So the way that I think about it is, you know, the study showed it, but if Latinas represent 1 in every 5 women and 3 in every 4 of them are regularly consulted by friends and family for their opinions on products and brands, this really isn't just a cohort that would be nice to connect with. It's a network that we cannot afford to miss. And I do believe that if they are treated as such, then it is a true competitive advantage. So it was just so incredible to see this data come together, and clearly we've hit on it a couple of times, so it stuck out to all of us, and it's just so incredibly important in how we all move forward.
All right, Anna, amazing. Do you want to have our closing thoughts for the session?
Well, yes. Juliana, did you want to say something?
Yes.
I just wanted to add that it's important to understand the consumer, to really reflect them authentically. Stereotyping is not authenticity. So that's an important notion here. And Shalise mentioned it, that Latina that wants to be in control is not the stereotype that we have in our minds about the Latina. And that's how we need to portray Latinas in media, in advertising, and how brands need to connect with them.
Yeah. I would love to close with that, because I have to say, when we talk about stereotypes or preconceived ideas, or Adrienne, you and I talked about myth and reality, it comes from media. So I think it starts with media, and I think we all will benefit the day media represents Latinas the way they are, rather than in old ways of how Latinas are being perceived. And this report should help media to not only do things more accurate, but also make more money, because Latinas will find a way to other platforms, other channels, other ways of entertainment. And they're doing it already. They are the ones that are driving the growth of YouTube and TikTok and gaming and all these things. And for advertisers like Shalise and other, of our friends, it's important to reach them. And if you're not reaching them through traditional media, you need to reach them through wherever they are. And that's a money being left on the table / opportunity of growth that is one of the many pearls hidden in these reports. It's been a pleasure. It really, we learn from all of you, each one of you, every time we talk about this subject, and I can't wait to see our next one because we'll keep producing information for everybody.
Yes, we will. So thank you to our partners, to the LDC. Thank you for joining us. And there is a link on the platform where you can download this incredible report. If you're a Kantar Monitor subscriber, you can get it on the gateway along with the webinar deck. And so with that, we say goodbye.